Hi, my name is Olivia Jadlocki, and this is my presentation about my study of truth and courage. I'll look at how resiliency can be developed through high school students. We have lived through many challenges and struggles over the past few years. It can be hard to find a way through difficult moments and back to happiness. I wanted to provide some guidance for our community that I think will help us make all these challenging times more manageable. This is a presentation about finding resilience in each of us. Resilience is a concept that means different things to different people. I have spent the past year exploring resilience and how it can be applied to the life of a teenager. In this presentation, I will talk about a number of steps I think are essential in developing resilience. This process includes facing the world and becoming aware of struggles we have encountered, and involves a way of being self-reflective and reframing our experience as we move into a place of recovery and new understanding. Throughout our lives, we all experience moments of difficulty and struggle. Difficult times in our lives do not have to defeat us. Rather, we can grow from them. Resilience is an important part of developing our well-being. And when developing resilience, developing the tools we need to provide us with a more comfortable relationship with this struggle. I believe that learning how to become more resilient is an essential life skill. Being resilient is not a talent that some people have and others don't. Resiliency is a skill that can be taught, honed, and developed. Cultivating resilience takes time, as a journey of learning that I believe can and should be taught to students. Through my research on the topic of resilience, I have found some common themes often discussed by psychologists and researchers who have examined resilience closely. I have come to think of these core concepts of resilience as a bridge that help us navigate across the struggle. The first step in navigation is becoming open to and aware of the struggle that is before you. Moving away from denial about the situation or pretending that it doesn't hurt is essential to establishing a sturdy foundation for our bridge to healing. With a foundation established, we begin our journey across the bridge through acceptance and understanding of the whole story. This requires us to be vulnerable, to open ourselves up to different perspectives about our situation, to be truthful and honest with ourselves, and to accept our mistakes. By developing skills in each of these areas, we can help students grow emotionally and become resilient people. During my study of this past year, I was inspired by the work of Brené Brown and her book Rising Strong. In our next few slides, I will talk about her Rising Strong process and some specific ways I think this process applies to high school students. My study of resilience was inspired by Brené Brown. Her work in development of resilience was truly fascinating. Dr. Brown has developed a process for resilience that begins with what she calls the reckoning. In this stage, we work to understand how we are thinking about our struggle. Having worked through the reckoning, we enter into the rumble. This phase of the process involves challenging our false truths and our mistaken interpretations. The rumble is a process that requires us to be vulnerable and self-reflective. The final step in Dr. Brown's process is the revolution. The ways we allow our past struggles to sharpen us and reframe us to face the future stronger and well-heeled. As I moved through my independent study of resilience, I thought often about how the Rising Strong process was developed by Dr. Brown could be specifically applied to teenagers. This led me to learn more about the developing brain and some common ways teenagers approach moments of stress and strain. Teenagers face many different struggles and difficulties. These range from relationship stresses to disappointments with our own success and failures, to even harder issues such as death of a classmate or someone close to us. The Rising Strong process gives us tools to navigate these times in our lives. It begins with reckoning, where we look closely at our emotions, open ourselves up to different ideas or perspectives by opening our mind, and finally working to expand our view of our story with the struggle. Part of my work on resiliency has focused on the skills that need to be taught to teenagers during school. An important part of success with the reckoning process is emotional awareness. I think that including lessons on expanding emotional awareness and using the frameworks such as this will help students improve their emotional intelligence. In the rumble phase of the Rising Strong process, we begin to challenge our ideas and perspectives about the struggle. We can help teens succeed with this step of the process by teaching them skills about accepting their mistakes, learning to question and challenge our assumptions, and to identify thinking errors as we often use. In the spirit of being honest with yourself and being present with yourself, taking a step back and focusing on how you're thinking about your struggle is really helpful. We use common thinking errors when we interpret situations in our lives. Teaching teens to know and recognize these common thinking errors is important to help developing skills of resiliency. Take a look at the list and notice any thinking errors you might use on a regular basis. The final step of the Rising Strong process is the revolution. During the revolution, we take what we have learned about our thinking, our feeling, our understanding, all of the struggle, and internalize those lessons into a new being. The revolution is a time for self-reflection and learning, thinking about what parts of the experience I want to continue and what I want to leave behind. The revolution requires that we slow down and give ourselves space to reflect on our learning, to celebrate our growth, to imagine who we can be as a result of having survived and grown from the struggle. Here are some of the keys of learning I have gathered in my study of the Rising Strong process that I think are important to develop in the skills of teenagers. As I moved through my research on resiliency and how it relates to teenagers, I learned a lot about brain development and some of the ways that it helps and hurts teenagers who are facing struggle. The teenage brain is in a vital stage in the developmental process. So much of it is fully developed and functioning, but one very important part just isn't quite developed yet. This underdeveloped lobe is called the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is responsible for many mental and physical functions. The most important underdeveloped function is the decision-making and logical thinking function. So much of this process relies on thinking and decision-making, so when adapting it to work for teenagers, it becomes a much more deliberate process to ensure that they are able to take the time to think through their actions more than the normal teenage brain would allow. Since the frontal lobe is not able to provide the teenage brain with the ability to think clearly and logically, other parts of the brain take over. One of the parts of the brain that takes over the process of decision-making is the amygdala. The amygdala is mostly associated with emotions and reactions, so when decisions are made through this part of the brain, they become less logical and become more driven by emotion. When the awareness of this type of decision is clear, the ability to reflect and digest the outcome becomes greater, allowing teenagers more success when reflecting on their decisions. The motto of the Dublin School is Truth and Courage. Without truth and courage, our ability to rise after a fall is much harder. We are unable to be present with ourselves, and our connections with the world around us are not as deep or interpersonal. Our relationship with struggle becomes much more jagged. I believe that teaching this Rising Strong process to teenagers will help them learn to face their struggle with truth and provide them with the courage to grow from them. Resilience takes courage. It takes courage to experience the truth of our living, not only the truth of our suffering, but the truth of our beautiful human spirit. Thank you for watching this short presentation about some of what I have learned about developing resilience in teenagers. I hope to continue this research in years ahead with the goal of creating a program focused specifically on teaching these skills of resilience to high school students.